Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, in the Rosemary tonight. My name is Szabolcs Böszörményi. I'm gonna be your guide tonight. Here is the owner, Mihály Herceg, and it's gonna be an interactive workshop, so we're gonna bake together the famous Hungarian Gerbaud cake. The history of the cake is there was a Swiss-born concessionaire who was working mostly in France, and then there was a Hungarian, very traditional concessionaire who was in a third generation, and he asked him to come to Budapest and take over his business because he had no children at all. And he came to Hungary in 1882, and in 1884 he took over the business and the name changed to Gerbaud Cafe, and it's a very famous cafe in Budapest till nowadays. So that's where he invented the Gerbaud cake, or at least that's one of the story. First of all, before we do anything with the pastry, we have a lukewarm milk, and we add 7 grams of powdered yeast. You can use not a real like live yeast, but then it's 25 grams. So we put the yeast, and then 1 teaspoon of sugar, and we mix it, and we let it on the side. Okay, so now we have 600 grams of flour there, and we're gonna use a pinch of salt. We have 300 grams of butter here. It's still cold. I cut it a little bit so it's easier to work into the pastry. You can also try, if you have a grinder, just grind it like a grated cheese or something. But if you do that, make sure you mix it quickly, because if the butter starts to melt, it's gonna be a different consistency with the pastry. Okay. So just mix it with your hands. It's like rub your hands a bit together, or crumble a little bit. Yes, something like that. Be brave. All right, the pastry is almost ready. So next we have 2 egg yolks and 2 tablespoons of sour cream. And if you can see, it's already risen, the yeast. But we can wait a little bit with that. Show it to that camera, please. Okay. Very good. So now mixing the 2 egg yolks, 2 tablespoons of sour cream, and now the milk with the yeast. Okay. Very good. And now just stir. Yes. So first, when you start to stir the pastry, it's gonna be like it's not a consistent, a lot of broken pieces. They are trying to run away. So just don't worry, just keep at it. And if you do it long enough, then it's all gonna stick together, and then it's not gonna stick anymore to the side of the bowl. Oh, by the way, if you see this beautiful porcelain bowl, Mihály, the owner of the restaurant, he also makes ceramics. So all the dishes you been served the food tonight is gonna be made by him. So now what I do, I just like to put it on the table, because then you can work on it until it's got consistency and you don't see any pieces. Okay, so now it's quite consistent, and the best thing to measure it, because we're gonna divide it to 4 pieces. Okay. So you can practice as well how well you could divide it just by looking at it and making it half and half. Okay, 274, 279, that's fine. Okay, so now when you have the small 4 pieces, you can just work them a bit together. And what I like to do, I make a shape, like a small rectangular shape, because that's gonna make it easier for us later to work with it. And then what you do, you just cover it with some cling film and just put it back in the fridge. So here what I prepared earlier, because usually you leave it in the fridge for about half an hour to rest. You're gonna use this traditional baking tray. It's about 24 times 30 centimeters. If you have a bit slightly bigger or smaller, it's fine. Just use what you have. So what I like to use is you have some baking parchment, and you cut it to the size of your baking tray, so then you can see how big you want to have your pastry, and this makes the whole process a lot easier. So the trick is to use flour, because then it's not gonna stick, on both sides. So what you do is you do it from the inside and you go from the inside out. I'm usually just like to move the paper, because for me it's easier to move to different sides, but you can try it any way you like. And if it's gonna be a bit bigger than the baking parchment, then you can just cut the sides off. So now it's ready. You can just lift it up and put it into the tray. Right. You see it's a little bit bigger on some sides. So if this happens, you just cut it off. And then we're gonna spread 200 grams of nice apricot jam. That's, if you can get something like that homemade, that's the best one. And don't worry about if you have some bigger piece, because with the cake, it's gonna be a nice bite when you have the bigger piece. And the same with the ground walnut. I like to make it to bigger pieces, so when you have a bite, it's a more crunchier. It's got the taste more than if you ground it too fine. So now we have a ground walnut. It's already mixed with Kaiser sugar. I use Kaiser sugar because it's not sticking as much as icing sugar, and it's in general better for baking. But if you have icing sugar, that's perfectly fine. So you can use that. And what I like to do is just to spread it. You can use a spoon to even out a little bit. So now we're done with this one. We're gonna make the next layer. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna poke the pastry until the bottom, so when it cooks, all the steam not gonna raise it too much and it's not gonna be uneven. So all the way through. We're gonna use some dark chocolate cullets. You got some oil so that chocolate not gonna be too hard when you cut the Gerbaud. Yes. So while she's doing that, when you take out from the tray, that's how it's gonna look like, and this is the bottom part of it, more flat than the top. So after you cook the Gerbaud, you want to wait at least half an hour or 1 hour to cool down, and when it's still a bit warm, then you would like to put the chocolate on top of it. Okay, so we have the Gerbaud. Now wait about half an hour for the chocolate to set, and then we can cut it. We're back with the Gerbaud. The chocolate is already set, and the way we serve it is 3 cm by 8 cm. I already made the 8 cm wide cut, and now what I like to do, I cut one, and when it's ready, I just put in the front, so I can cut it to the exact same side. And then I just do it again and again, so it's much quicker. And you can use some hot water to the knife if it sticks to it. But usually what I do, I take it out from the fridge if it was in the fridge. So the whole chocolate and the Gerbaud is room temperature, and then it's much easier to cut. Just use a brush soak. It's our homemade jam, which is a blueberry jam, and then we just cook with some cinnamon and some orange and some red wine. So now we have the Gerbaud. Bon appetit. Jó étvágyat!